Hello, I'm Antonio Mora. This is the newsandnews.com Day in Brief on Monday, March 11th at about 7 p.m. President Trump is escalating his demands for money to fund a barrier on the Mexican border. Trump kicked off a new battle by asking for $8.6 billion for fiscal 2020. That's more than 6 times what Congress has allocated in prior years. $5 billion would come from Congress, $3.6 billion from the military construction budget. That's on top of the $8 billion or so Trump is trying to shift to the wall under his emergency declaration. Speaker Pelosi and Senate Majority Leader Schumer said the proposal is dead on arrival, warning that this could lead to another government shutdown. The total budget request is for $4.7 trillion, with a deficit of $1.1 trillion. That's the highest in a decade. Historical demands from the GOP for a balanced budget are a distant memory. In a mild nod to fiscal responsibility, the budget calls for cuts in a series of domestic programs, slashing funding for environmental programs and the education department, repealing Obamacare, and limiting Medicaid spending. Defense spending, though, would soar, including the building of a space force. Spending at the Department of Veterans Affairs would also jump. Controversially, it would expand work requirements for Americans who receive a variety of welfare benefits. A series of airlines across the world are grounding their new Boeing 737 MAX 8 planes after a crash in Ethiopia that killed the 157 people on board. They came from 35 countries, including at least 8 from the U.S. The Ethiopia Airlines plane plummeted to the ground just minutes after takeoff on Sunday. Both the flight data and voice recorders have been found. The circumstances of the accident are eerily similar to an October crash of the same model plane in Indonesia that killed 189 people. Authorities believe that crash was caused by pilots struggling with an automated anti-stall system that was erroneously activated by incorrect flight data. U.S. airlines, including Southwest and American, the biggest operators of the 737 MAX planes, are facing a barrage of questions and concerns from passengers. Both airlines say they stand by the new planes, and Boeing's CEO insisted that the, quote, bottom line here is that the 737 MAX is safe. Speaker Pelosi says Trump is unfit to be president, ethically, intellectually, and curiosity-wise, but that she would not go down the path of impeachment, quote, because it divides the country and he's just not worth it. That might put her at odds with many Democrats on Capitol Hill, some of whom have vocally called for impeachment. Does Trump believe Democrats hate Jews? White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders refused to answer that question after Trump publicly suggested that was the case. She said reporters should ask Democrats. She accused the opposition party of not doing enough to condemn remarks by Congresswoman Ilhan Omar that were seen as anti-Semitic. Sanders held her first on-camera news briefing in 42 days, ending the longest gap between televised White House briefings in recent history. Sanders had broken her own record. Before the Trump administration came around, they were held on a daily basis. To run or not to run? That is the question Joe Biden keeps struggling to answer, but advisors to the former vice president are reportedly saying his decision on whether to run for president in 2020 is now imminent. He returns this week from a family vacation in the Virgin Islands. Another presidential candidate, Kirsten Gillibrands, has been one of the most outspoken advocates of the Me Too movement. She has also been at the forefront of calling attention to sexual assault in the military. But now she stands accused of improperly handling a sexual assault complaint from one of her female staffers. That staffer accused a senior Gillibrands aide of making repeated unwelcome advances. She then resigned, saying Gillibrands did not abide by the standards she demands of others. In a statement, Gillibrands claimed the staffer's allegations were taken seriously. But Politico recently presented Gillibrands with additional allegations against the senior aide, and he was dismissed last week. The Pentagon says it could cut the number of troops deployed on the southern border later this month. About 4,000 are currently there. Many of them have been helping Customs and Border Protection install barbed wire along 140 miles of the border. British Prime Minister Theresa May traveled to Strasbourg, France today for last-ditch talks with the EU on Brexit. She is meeting with the EU Commission's president in the hopes of avoiding another humiliating defeat in Parliament, which is scheduled to vote on May's plan tomorrow. She could lose again by a wide margin. If she does, May promised British lawmakers that they could vote on whether to extend negotiations past the March 29th deadline. Even if they do that, the other 27 EU governments would need to agree. That could lead to another referendum on whether the UK should leave the EU after all. The chain reaction consequences of the failure of Venezuela's electric grid are turning chaos into anarchy. Much of Venezuela is still without power after massive outages began on Thursday. At one point, 99% of the country's more than 30 million people had no electricity. The lack of power has led to water shortages and the shutting down of most oil operations. People are dying in hospitals, and much-needed food is spoiling for lack of refrigeration. Schools and government offices were closed, and looting has broken out in cities across the country, where a calamitous situation has turned even more unbearable. The interim president of Venezuela, Juan Guaidó, accused the Maduro dictatorship of murdering the victims of the blackout and called for mass protests on Tuesday. One of the two women accused of killing North Korean leader Kim Jong Un's brother, Kim Jong-nam, has been freed. The Indonesian woman was accused of smearing the toxic nerve agent VX on his face at Kuala Lumpur's airport 2 years ago. Both women claimed they were tricked by North Korean agents who told them it was a prank for a comedy show and thought they were using lotion. Indonesia had lobbied for the woman's release. Her Vietnamese co-defendant remains jailed. You might want to take extra care next time you take a selfie. In plenty of cases, people have died in their attempts to take a perfect picture. Now a woman is recovering after having her arm slashed by a jaguar. She was attacked when she apparently crossed a barrier to take a selfie near the fence of the jaguar enclosure at an Arizona zoo. We have all those stories and much more updated around the clock 7 days a week on newsandnews.com, where you will find all you need to know in one place. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the right of your screen just below this video. And please follow us on Facebook at Real News and News, and follow me on Twitter at AMoraTV. I'll see you again tomorrow.